Fem Forte is sponsored by Ultimate Drillbook. UDB app modernizes marching band. Spend less time, have more fun, and achieve at a higher level. Just upload your drill from Pyware into the UDB app, and everyone in your band gets animations with your show music, precise pathways, synced music, notes, props, and so much more. It's just easier. Head to ultimatedrillbook.com and use code FEMFORTE when you order to get 20% off UDB App Pro. Fem Forte is sponsored by the Bluecoats. Don't miss a mega lineup the Monday of DCI Championships Week at Innovations in Brass, featuring the Bluecoats, Blue Devils, Boston Crusaders, Carolina Crown, Mandarins, and more. You won't want to miss this show at the beautiful Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium in Canton, Ohio. Get your tickets for Innovations in Brass today at bluecoats.com/innovations.
Just being genuine and straightforward in your endeavors and your commitment to what you're doing, and admitting when you're not in a place where you're ready to be someone who you're not, you know what I mean? Like, I think is really important. And I find that humility in just taking note of what place I'm at in my life or in my career and whatever journey I'm on, just taking note and acknowledging it, accepting that, always means that I have something to look forward to, you know, in around the corner.
Welcome to Fem Forte, a podcast where we celebrate women in music and performing arts. I'm your host, Amanda DeFries. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Today we are joined by Samia Vanderkolff. Ever since I started Fem Forte, Samia has been at the top of my list of guests, and I was so excited when she agreed to be on the show. Samia is currently the Movement Caption Head for the Bluecoats and has helped choreograph many top performing ensembles from all around the world. We talk about the importance of movement in the marching arts and highlights from her time starring in the movie On the Starting Line. It was such an honor to have Samia on the show, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Fem Forte. Today we have a very special guest. Today we have Samia Vanderkolff from the Bluecoats. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited. I mean, you were one of the first people I had reached out to when this whole thing started. You were one of the first guests that I wanted to have on the show, and I'm so excited that we're finally making it happen.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's really kind.
So I know who you are, but go ahead and tell our listeners and viewers who you are, where you're from, and how you got into marching arts, dance, etc.
Sure. So I'm Samia, and I'm originally from the Bay Area, from California, so Northern California. And the way that I actually got into color guard was, I think this is true to myself, a little bit of comedy, but I was a sophomore in high school on the tennis team, and I was walking through campus, and a bunch of students were working out. They were doing like sit-ups and planks, and I thought that they were a fitness club. So I asked if I could check it out, and they were like, yeah, we're a color guard. And I was like, what's that? And they were like, oh, I'll just show up tomorrow at practice. So pretty much just jumped right in. I was really naive, had no idea what I was doing. But, kind of like a late bloomer with color guard and dance. But, this was years and years ago, and that has led me to now I work with the Bluecoats and the Movement Caption Head there. Really have dove into a lot of movement education and just education in general. And I'm a graduate assistant at a university in Indianapolis and teach there as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you started out from an athletic background. So through that and being introduced to the color guard and then getting introduced to dance, what made you fall in love with the art form of like either color guard and or dance and movement overall?
Yeah. So this, being a part of this podcast and sitting with you, looking over, some of the things we might talk about really required me to reflect on why I'm interested in what I'm interested in. And I think a lot of it honestly had to do with being interested in how and the mechanics of, once I was in color guard, obviously, and learning how to dance, but the mechanics and learning the technique was really what I found interesting and challenging, as an adolescent and then later in my life. But the foundation was definitely built in athletics, tennis, running, swimming. But also I was, also involved in the arts with choir and, I'd always loved, drawing and writing. So kind of molded those two together. But I think what's kept me sort of staying interested for sure has been understanding how people move and understanding, just the science and the forces that act on the body. So that's what I'm currently exploring now. I'm finishing a degree in kinesiology, but the emphasis is in biomechanics. So really interested in looking at how, people can either recover from injury or, I don't necessarily want to go into physical therapy, but just, the science around how and why the body is doing what it's doing. But it's really neat because the way the activity, I think, is evolving and progressing now, kind of there are less barriers. People are a lot more open to exploring whether it's the performative side or the physicality of drum corps and band especially. I think it really opens up a lot of doors for exploring the movement science behind the marching arts as well. So I'm excited for, what's to come.
Yeah, so you have participated not only at your high school, and I've also been a part of drum corps, not only from an education standpoint with Bluecoats, but also participated with Santa Clara Vanguard.
Yeah.
And so through that, what made you passionate about learning the movement and mechanics? Yeah. Was it your experience in drum corps that made you think about those things a little bit more?
I think it's interesting. I think it's a question of what, but it's also really, really a matter of who and the people that stood in front of me and took the time to, nurture that curiosity within, a young performer and a young, I'm not going to say an artist, but just someone who's exploring that world. So I think starting with the who, if that's okay. I'd love to talk about, just some like foundational people. So first, in high school, when I was probably most impressionable and just jumping in for the first time. So this woman, Teresa Mora, she was a color guard director out in the Bay Area. She and her husband ran the high school program. She had marched San Jose Raiders. She had marched Star of Indiana. But just having a strong, whether it's a man or a woman, having a strong person with a strong identity who is invested in not only the education of the performer, but, just helping them to navigate questions or helping them to navigate a path that is of interest to them in the activity. So Teresa, I think really ignited my intrigue for movement because everything was movement based. We were always dancing no matter what season, winter or fall or just training. It was always starting with dance class, starting with the body. So she was really the person that kind of helped carve that out for me. And then Carol Abou-Hattab is my sister, auntie, friend. She was in my wedding. She's just, she's a dear, dear, not only mentor, but just, force in my life who's always been there to help answer whether it's answer questions or help pique my interest, but just a great sounding board as well. And she's also still, in the activity and still very much so in and around and involved. So we've kind of had this relationship, of the who's has transitioned from teacher student to, colleagues and friends. So that's been really rewarding. So that first of all. And then I think, other than the people and, learning and continuing to build off of relationships for the past however many years, I think what's kept me interested and passionate about it is just, I think it's teaching. Honestly, I think it's, it could sound cliche. I don't really care about the competition side of it. I think it's wonderful, but I would much rather be in a world where we're just teaching and learning, exploring things and avenues that we find interesting,
Yeah.
And also just, like I said, the way that the activity is going, I think lends itself to a lot of openness, hopefully. So I'm excited to see, who comes out with the next, I don't know, it could be tech, that's going to be introduced into the activity. We'll leave AI off the table for a little bit, you know what I mean? We don't want anyone composing our music for us just yet, but I'm interested to see, how that can develop. Yeah.
Yeah. On that note with teaching, because you had so many great role models and inspirations and like you said, sounding boards, do you think that was the catalyst to make you passionate about going into the educational side of it because you had so many?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. 100%. I think, I'm a product of my environment, but I think I'm more so a product of the people that have been around to help shape me for sure. I was thinking back, I consider myself lucky to be, socially, I'm interested in making friends. I'm interested in building relationships with a variety of people in the activity and outside of the activity. But I think what it is about, the learning and the learner side of it is that is always going to continue to change, and as the activity changes and evolves, there's always something new to adapt to. So I think it's kind of jumping over those little hurdles or those steps bit by bit that is, rewarding to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And with that being said, I mean, for the time that I have known you, you are such a light and such a people person and so welcoming. And honestly, if I can be really honest with you, one of the things that I noticed about you is I believe I first met you at the TBA conference when you were doing the Bluecoats clinic. And one of the things that I've noticed about you through our time running into each other, whether it's at DCI or another conference or a show or something, is that you are just the nicest and most welcoming person.
Oh my gosh.
And that was something that I was actually really nervous about going into UDB. A lot of it comes from imposter syndrome, just because I don't have drum corps experience. I have indoor experience, but I never got to much drum corps. And as we are a company that is very heavily involved in the drum corps scene, I don't have that experience a lot of times when people get to know me. But for you, and just getting to know you and talk to you, for you, like, that didn't matter, and you still like treated me as an equal, and such a welcoming presence every time that I get to see you. Even like
that
when
is
you
so kind.
even though when you came into the office, you're like, oh my gosh, hi, how are you? Like, for those who are listening and watching, if you don't know Samia is one of the sweetest, absolute gems of a person that I have met. And it's such an honor to not only have you in this seat right now, but I'm just so excited to get behind and share your story with everybody else.
If the camera isn't panning to me, I'm just going to start tearing up. I want to reach over and hug you. Oh, that's so interesting you say that. Honestly, like, okay, I love the way the universe works. I think that I can find a positive outlook on just about anything. And when I was like getting ready and doing my hair in the UDB studio here just a bit ago, I was just, honestly, I was thinking about imposter syndrome. And I was like, what could be an interesting spin with talking about that? And I had actually forgotten that you don't have drum corps experience, because I'm not even going to say you're selling it. You're not selling anything, but you just are doing what I would give advice to most people to do, is just go in and do it. Like, imposter syndrome is such, I think, just a construct designed, probably in some way designed to help keep people down and in a certain place. But I think the best way to just maybe not care about what other people think is just, it sounds so silly, but just you can't care so much. And I think in this activity, there can, especially with social media now, there can be such a focus on, look at my success, look at these things that I'm doing, look at all the plates that I'm juggling. And, obviously we know social media can be only one tiny glimpse into someone's life, but it makes it really difficult to try to move forward with your career or with, anything really, if you're always comparing your losses to someone else's successes. And, you really have to kind of just put blinders on. Like, I don't really know how people view me, and I try not to stop and really think about it too much, because I don't want to get in my own head, and I don't want to care too much about what people think about me as well. So, and I've always found that just, kindness is free. There are no negatives that can come from it. And also, I think, you do a great job with this podcast. I think it's amazing. Your studio is amazing here. You're just like, I'm constantly checking in to see who you have on each week or each month. I'm like, yeah. But I think just being genuine and straightforward in your endeavors and your commitment to what you're doing, and admitting when you're not in a place where you're ready to be someone who you're not, you know what I mean? Like, I think is really important. And I find that humility in just taking note of what place I'm at in my life or in my career, in whatever journey I'm on, just taking note and acknowledging it, accepting that, always means that I have something to look forward to, in around the corner. So thank you for those kind words. That's so sweet.
Of course. I
I'm
just
smiling here.
and I think that's a really great point that you make. That's one of the hardest lessons that I've had to learn in my life is, and I have a tattoo on my arm here that goes to show it.
Yeah.
The quote goes, "When I accept myself, I am freed from the burden of needing you to accept me." And that has been one of the hardest lessons I've learned. Mm-hmm. And really what has helped me gain confidence, not only through this podcast, we are in production of season 3 right now. And season 2 just recently released, and I can already see the growth that I've made as a host from episode 1 to now being more confident and projecting that confidence, and that is help interviews go by smoother, so on and so forth. And so with that being said, and how you talked about how you see yourself, I'm just gonna gloat a little bit about you. I'm so excited to have you on the show. I cannot say that enough. I was jumping up and down before today's recording, and I just think you're an absolute rock star in this industry, and I think you're truly making waves. And with that being said, I actually have a Sharpie here.
Oh my gosh.
Because I kind of want your autograph, because I have something a little special for you that I don't think you know that I've come across.
I feel like this could be something in a case that is watchable on an old archaic piece of technology. Let's please talk about this. This is so great because I feel like not enough people know about this.
Yes. So for those of you who are listening and or watching, I am holding a DVD that says "On the Starting Line." And what this is, I actually watched it last night. I watched the whole movie. It's a movie, and it actually stars Samia.
Sure does.
It talks about the road to auditioning in drum corps and being on tour, and the
it's
main
a coming
character,
of age story specifically.
The main character, by the name of Win, but full name Winifred, wants to compete for the Royal Phoenix Drum and Bugle Corps, which I tried looking that up.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that was
totally
an
made
actual
up
corps,
Absolutely.
but was the corps that this character originally was in was a smaller open or DCA? Was that kind of the feel?
So the idea was that this character was in at that time, B class. We would call it B class corps. Now it's open class. So open class corps, auditioning and wanting to be in the A class or world class drum corps. I think she was in the Silver Sabres, and she was trying to make it big in the Royal Phoenix, complete with a theme song by the Santa Clara Vanguard, composed and arranged by Key Poland.
Yes, I saw that he was there at the end as a judge for when you were doing this solo.
Yeah.
But also, I thought it was really interesting because I know this was quite a while ago, but I believe that for those shots that you did versus whether it was for your solo or the group shots, did that require a lot of training and practice?
So for the script itself and the acting so it was a scripted movie. So I had a full script I had to memorize and learn. I have no acting experience. But, the positives were that we filmed at the Corps Hall in Santa Clara, or we filmed at spring training. I think this was my age out year. So this was almost 20 years ago, almost. And I actually think that I ditched out of, my folks that I probably marched with were yeah, she was barely there. I think I probably missed out on spring training for maybe 2 weeks. So we would go around and film on different locations. But yeah, I had to learn and memorize a script. And we had, there are many, many cameos by people that I'd marched with. Mm-hmm. So I can, any scene really that you look at, the extras are horn players, color guard, winter guard members, staff in there. So it was really a family affair, I think, at the time. Never did I ever imagine that it would follow me this long. It has showed up. There were students from every school I've been to. It showed up at Vandergrift. It showed up at Avon. And at Avon, I was running the dance department with dancers that aren't necessarily color guard members, but I mean, it showed up like the last week of classes. It has not followed me to the university, but it could now. What else do you want to know about this? This was such a
I just want to know, like, how was this opportunity brought up to you?
Yeah.
And with not having acting experience, like, how did you have to learn how to be a part of a script and do the whole thing?
Full cameraman, full production team and everything. I mean, it was the full shebang. And the guard director at the time had said that there's an opportunity to act in a movie, a drum corps movie. And, the director is an alumnus, I believe, of the Blue Devils, I think, but she's Bay Area local. And I believe that they said that they were going to be looking at members of Vanguard and of Blue Devils, just because we were, two of the local corps at the time, to audition for parts. Now, I don't know how many people auditioned for it. I have no idea. But after they told me I got it, it was kind of like one of those things where I was like, oh, shoot, like I actually have to commit to, I think it's a 90, it might be a 6. What's the runtime on there?
The runtime, 98 minutes.
98 minutes, like no acting experience. I am not a great test taker in general. So when I have to memorize material, it just doesn't work like that for me. So I don't know how I did it. And I will say, thankfully, it was a really productive and welcoming, and they really were patient. The production team is really patient. The writers, the producers, the camera guy. I have an on-screen boyfriend who is not a drum corps person. We had an on-screen kiss. I had to watch the premiere of this with my parents. Like it was. I don't want to be. I mean, it was not a bad experience by any means, and I'm thankful I can look back on it and I can appreciate many parts of it. And I'm not going to drag it through the mud also, because it's someone's work and someone's passion. I am thankful I was able to be a part of it. I am interested in, if anyone wants to make a sequel, a different sequel, I'd be interested to see that. And I would watch. No, I don't want to be in it. But if someone wanted to make an updated version of this, I would definitely watch this. I feel like more exposure for the activity,
I agree,
is a great thing. I sometimes just sit and, I mean, not often, but, as we're, for example, now we're getting ready to start a new season of Winter Guard, and drum corps is ramping up. We have auditions this weekend for the Bluecoats, but I sometimes just ponder and think, like, what's the longevity of this activity, and how many people out there really are familiar with it and know about it, because I can explain to my non-band and non-drum corps friends, faculty on campus, I can explain till I'm blue in the face that, it's a really small world, but there's thousands of schools around the country. But I often think, what really is the exposure that we have? But I would see a second movie for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, as someone who knows their way behind cameras, I would love to do something like that.
Yeah. Let's get the gears turning. I'll sign it right now. Pass it over.
Here you go.
That's so funny. Where did you even find this? Did you buy it on Amazon?
I did.
Amazon. Okay. My last senior class of students, they told me that they could only find it on, I want to say eBay.
Oh.
They were like eBay only.
Interesting. Yeah, I found an Amazon link, and at first I was kind of confused because the picture for, the DVD was not that specifically. It was you with the flip phone taking recording. And I had actually sent it to Luke and Josh, and I was like, do you know what this is? I was like,
did they know?
Yes, they did. I was like, is this a legit thing? And they were like, oh yeah, like apparently like she was in a movie. And I was like, I am. and actually this, I had bought it when we were at BOA, and I got it overnighted the next day. And so there was not a DVD player in the Airbnb, but luckily when we, rescheduled it for today, last night I watched it the whole way through, and I was like, I'm ready. I was like just watching it. And I think what you said, love that. I think what you said about exposure to the activity, I mean, the lines in that movie, it does generate a lot of what most of the general public says of like, oh, how's your marching band thing going?
Your flag team.
Yeah. Or
your twirling team.
Are you still twirling? And something that your character would say a lot is like, it's not a marching band, it's a drum corps.
Oh my
It's a drum corps. It's not a this, it's a drum corps. And I think that repetition, you know, had I not been a part of the activity, I think it is in its own way a great education resource of exposing what drum corps is. And, you know, you see throughout the movie the term seat partner and how that's important, and the friendships that you build within the activity. So I think, to your point, I do think some kind of sequel or remake or something.
We should just rebrand this as a beginner's guide, you know, like Drum Corps for Dummies. Watch this movie. Basically tells you not to drink before your audition.
Oh yeah,
here's
definitely
how
don't do that. Which I have to ask, as someone who has not been a part of drum corps, how accurate do you think? Obviously, some of the bits were in it for entertainment reasons, but how much of that do you think is accurate to what goes on?
Let me think back. Let me look at the back of the DVD and look at the scenes here. So, yeah, I mean, the grueling rehearsal schedule, I think I watched this maybe twice, and that was maybe 15 years ago. The rehearsal schedule is accurate. Kind of the like clicky, you know, can I say the B word on here?
Yes.
Okay. So my friend Jenny, she's supposed to play the bitch. And, I would say that some of like the sort of harsh, maybe, how would you say this? Some of the portrayals of the characters being like very in a box, like this girl's the rude one, and this one is the, you know, really overly, you know, gay boy, like that. I don't know that they're the most accurate depictions, but I also feel like, you know, I don't really drink, but socially it's kind of on par. It looks like I don't even remember these scenes. We still filmed like a waking up in the gym. That's all accurate.
Yes.
Show prep. Oh, there is the underlying, there's a girl with an eating disorder in here. And you know what? Okay. So I would say pretty, not accurate, but pretty realistic, but we are far more in the activity. We are far more adept with, you know, tools and resources to probably prevent a lot of the scenes that would have happened in the movie. I still say that it should be rebranded as a like drum corps for dummies, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, watch this and you're good to go. A dream starts with a desire. It's so funny to look at this and also see, you know, the technology is so old, like it's clip art on the cover and it's in limited 5K edition on a DVD. So let's get a new version going, but you can have that signed copy. I don't know how many are left in the world. So
thank you.
You never know.
No, I'll definitely treasure it forever. But with that being said, that movie actually tricked me, because when your character goes into the psychic thing.
Yep. So you're saying things and now it's coming back to me. Yes.
Well, as someone who just watched it last night.
I think that was actually the director who played Flip Over. What's the director's name? Was Linda Vito?
Yes, that was Linda Vito.
Yeah, she played I went to see a psychic, and what did the psychic tell me?
And the psychic was like, oh, I see you with a purple umbrella and a rose tattoo. And here I am thinking that like, oh, the first time you audition, you're going to get it. But then when the two rules are watch your attitude and don't show up late, and then you think that you absolutely blew it. I genuinely thought, like, I was like, oh no, I thought this was gonna have a happy ending. They really got to me. And then when you got the call back and everything, and then I see the last scene, I was like, they did it. The rose tattoo, the purple umbrella, it all makes sense now. Which, by the way, when I saw that, I had to remember I was watching a movie, because I was like, I don't remember Samia having a rose tattoo.
You know? Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, it's probably fake.
Yeah, so many, like, wardrobe. I think wardrobe was like mostly just my clothes. Yeah. But it was accurate, you know, for the time. I was still marching.
Yeah.
Yeah. Funny.
Awesome. Well, anyway, I just thought that was a nice thing
I
to
love
show
that
you.
I love that you brought that up, and it will live on in infamy forever.
Yes. And so with that, and speaking about opportunities, I mean, being with activity and going from performing in Santa Clara Vanguard, how did you get the opportunity to teach with Bluecoats?
Yeah. So at the time I had finished college, I was, so I marched, I performed. That was all great. I was happy to be done marching when I was, I had marched in the winter and continued long after I'd aged out. And I felt like I had walked away during a good time for me. I was content. And I really just stayed the route of health and fitness. So I've been a personal trainer for a long time, group exercise. I moved to Austin. And when I moved here, I was like very, very strict with myself. I want to take a break from pageantry and just, focus on career in health and see where that leads me to. And that did not last long. That lasted about a year, maybe a year and change before I started teaching again.
Yeah.
And before I actually started working with Bluecoats, I was doing the Tour of Champions, the second iteration of the Tour of Champions. So the first iteration was like 2003-04. It was an extended tour after DCI. So like the top, I think top 6 or top 8 did an extended tour after DCI ended. So that was that. But then around 2012, 13, maybe 11, 12, 13 or 14, we had like it was myself, Dan Potter, it was all organized by Carlo. But we would have little maybe vignettes and field moments and interview moments, either in between chores or during intermission or pre-show or post-show. So I did that first and thought, okay, well, maybe I might be interested in sports broadcasting. And then just after a long pause, had reached out to Jim Moore, and he had said that they had an opportunity for movement instruction. And I was like, yeah, why not? So jumped back into that. And really, I have to give Bluecoats and, Mike Scott and Dave Glasgow and Genevieve Geisler some credit because they really invested in creating a position, in a role of a movement supervisor. And I think that was in 2019, maybe 18 or 19. Mm-hmm. So they really invested in prioritizing movement and movement training for the drum corps in a way that felt like, it wasn't just an afterthought, or it just felt, I felt like they really respected the role and respected what the drum corps or the activity or what they felt like their group needed at the time. So started doing that and kind of just haven't really looked back ever since. But, I love the Bluecoats, but I also have an incredible appreciation for all of the drum corps. I feel like I'm at this place in my maybe experience or age where I also don't really care about the competition, like I said, but where we'll start the season and I genuinely am just like, I just want everyone to have a great time and I want students to learn and I want to see some great artistry. But I'm really thankful that Bluecoats has given me not only an experience and trust, but a platform to be able to develop maybe what my voice is, within that. So yeah, what else about movement?
Yeah, how does movement and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I saw a press release about you are now the movement caption head. And so you were the movement supervisor and now you're the movement caption head.
I think they're just kind of making the title match what I was already doing.
Gotcha.
And also just like to be on the same playing field with the other caption heads. I'm organizing a staff. I have been organizing a staff and their schedules, the technique program, the ins and outs of, whether it's in the show or during spring training or during audition season, materials and videos and, language around movement and, vision for the training, and working with our choreographers. So I've already been doing all that, but I think they just are making it more of a even level playing field, for me with the rest of the caption heads, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which is nice, appreciate that. So yeah, but we start every day with dance class, whether it's the entire drum corps. I mean, the drum corps does start the day with dance class. Sometimes we're together, sometimes we're separate.
Yeah.
But no matter what, we're always focusing on that. So yeah, it's been really great.
And so a big question that I personally want to ask you is, what is the difference between movement and then being a choreographer? So how does that differentiate?
Sure. So being a choreographer is going to set your phrases. So they are going to be sort of the creative artist in that role. So they're going to be taking what their vision is and putting it out there on the students or on the field or the floor. But movement in general, listen, this is partly what I've taken from Carol all these years, but movement can be anything, and movement exploration can be as grandiose as, watching a stage show or a solo ballerina or artist, or just us sitting in this chair and switching and crossing our legs or gesturing towards each other could be a dance or a duet. Do you know what I mean? So not to get super deep with it, but movement can really be any type of exploration, through your body or through your, ether, or your energy or your mood. And I really, throughout the years, I feel lucky I've had an opportunity to work with a lot of students with disabilities, still currently now in this semester at the university. And it's so rewarding just to allow the space, a safe space for people to express themselves, or explore expression. And if they don't want to explore expression, then it's just maybe the physicality of it that they find interesting. So that has been really rewarding as well. So I would say, choreographer and choreography it's not confined, but it's very specific and has its place. And while that can be blown out, it's very specific, where movement is a much more watercolor, airbrush, zone. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for explaining that, because I genuinely did not know.
Oh, yeah.
Do you still teach at Avon?
No, I don't work at Avon anymore. I was there pre-pandemic, during, and post, and ultimately I was just burned out, just with, it was a lot. It was a lot with all of that. So I left there and went back to school. And I'm getting my graduate degrees in kinesiology, but again, exploring biomechanics. So, the mechanics of movement and movement science, but more specifically, it's, forces acting upon the body. So physics, velocity. I really have always been, I think, because of the blend of having teachers that were so great at teaching the how we dance and how I can, run faster. The how has always really interested me. So biomechanics can allow me to explore in a much deeper level the science of how we're moving. So I've always been really fascinated. Like, I watch people walk all the time in the airport or my students. And there always comes a point in the semester where I'm like, I can imitate every single one of you walking across the floor. And they're like, yeah, show me. Yeah. And I'm like, fine, someone volunteer and walk across, and they'll go, and then I'll go right after them. And I am fascinated by observing movement and the mechanics of it. So that's what I'm doing now, and looking forward to doing some research. And
yeah. So you currently work with, obviously, Bluecoats, but a lot of other bands, correct?
Yeah.
So do you think, because of how broad this subject is, do you think that you will eventually expand outside of band?
Yeah, so in the areas of movement?
Yes.
I would love to. I don't want to give away all my secrets, but I would love to, meld those things together. There's very little research out there, scientifically backed research with dancers specifically in winter guard programs. So dancing on gym floors, on a tarp for the hours that they do, being asked what they're being asked to do, throughout the season, as well as, marching technique. Yes, there's some, but a lot of it has to do with posture and sway and, VO2 max and your breathing and your lung capacity. And so there's not a ton I could find out there with marching and pageantry. I would love to explore just looking at the mechanics of how you toss a saber. And although we have a codified technique and techniques, depending on what part of the country you're in, East Coast and West Coast can be different. Really just depends on who your teachers are. But those techniques don't always mean it's the most efficient way. So I would love to explain, I'm not saying that outright, I'm just saying maybe, but I would love to explore, a lot of facets of drum corps and color guard and band and marching and playing while marching, all of it, and see, what is most efficient, and what is doing us maybe what's more of a detriment to what we're doing. It's kind of in line with, again, I don't want to go into physical therapy. I'm not an athletic trainer, but it's a little bit more in line with, trainers with a band or with a drum corps that look at injury prevention and most commonly occurring injuries, and whether that's due to technique or shoes or surfaces and all of that stuff. So a little bit more parallel with that is what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make it happen. I got a lot of ideas.
Absolutely. I mean, again, all more the reason of why I wanted you on this show. I mean, this show is obviously about celebrating amazing women like yourself, but it's also about how do you get involved with the arts in very non-traditional ways. And I think especially now more than ever, we are creating these roles for ourselves, and we are truly changing the game, so to speak, or being trailblazers in our industry. And as you and being amazing at the work that you do, I'm super excited to see where that takes us next.
Yeah, me too. It's like the unknown, the what's out there. It's that, it's very, very few times in your life I think you can have feelings like that. Definitely when you're a child and you're like, what am I going to be when I grow up? What's it going to be like when I'm 15? What happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there are these stages, and I think when we're young, we can have that. And if we're lucky enough to maybe change careers, or, if something falls into your lap, or you have a creative, light bulb that goes off and you want to explore something. But I think what's interesting is I think we have more opportunities to do that in the arts than anywhere else.
Yeah.
So it's reassuring, because even if I know that if I'm going to have failures, I know that there's more out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in that regard, it's really, really exciting. And it gives me comfort, Yeah.
Well, with your experience, what advice would you give someone listening or someone watching who wants to kind of enter into this topic and genre of what you're doing? Like, if, say, they're in marching band or maybe just aged out drum corps and want to get into this field and start exploring this more.
Yeah.
How do they do that?
I think for sure you want to be able to back up your statements with education. So whether that's finding a mentor, or going to school, or taking an online class, or reading. But I think starting with absorbing and getting some facts and some things under your belt that can help build a foundation for what you want to do and what you want to say first. I think if I could answer that in a what not to do, going back to that imposter syndrome, try not to do the comparison game, but you have to be comfortable enough, and not necessarily thick skin, but you have to be bold enough to know that you're going to fail and it's going to be okay. And no, not everything has been done or been said, and the activity is always going to change. So there's always going to be something new and some new need that's going to arise with that. And I think, it's good. There's a lot of advice. Clearly, I have a lot of things to say, but ask questions, and communicate. I think the worst thing someone could do is just sit in the corner and say, it's too late for me. My time's never going to come, or I don't know the right people. A little, like an email or a text, like you've so wonderfully demonstrated with this podcast, just communicating to people saying, hey, do you have time for a conversation? I would love to learn about XYZ. And what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Someone's going to say no. You know what I mean? But just go to the next person, or go to your next book. But yeah, I think that. And, movement is could easily be dismissed, because I think just like, flag team, or like, you just do glorified marching band, there can be a perception about anything. And, but I think it's up to those new young folks or old folks, we don't discriminate. I think it's up to us to try to get the word out and, make of this activity, and mold it and make it what we need it to be for us. So that was really a lot, but
No, I love the advice that you're sharing because
Yeah.
I think this is a really important topic and people need to hear it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah. So we're just about to wrap up here, and I have 2 final questions for you. The first question is, what's the most fulfilling part of what you do?
Oh gosh. I think in my notes, I was like, everything. I do really, I mean, that's not true. Not everything. Because I could think of like, the beginnings of projects are always really like daunting. The most fulfilling part, I have got to say, the first thing that comes to mind, I just see faces of students when you ask that. So I think it has nothing to do with leaving a legacy for me, but I think leaving an impact or an imprint on a student or a coworker or just people. I think deep down, even though am I an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert? I think the second one. I think I'm really introverted, but I'm decent about being social.
Yeah.
And so I need that social interaction. So I think for me, it's being around people, building relationships, working with students and seeing light bulbs go off, even if it's just creating or allowing a space for a student to explore and feel safe. And maybe that student's going to do 20 minutes of improvisation and say, I really don't like this. Thank you very much, and leave. But they were allowed the space to do it and the opportunity to do it. And so I think it's just got to be the people, connecting with the people. And it always reminds me that I'm still learning too. So, which I love. I'm a sponge. Yeah.
I lied. There's 2 more questions.
Okay. Yeah, go for it.
The next one is, what do you want to be remembered for?
Oh gosh. Let me think here. I just think I don't want to be remembered for things that I did. I just want to be remembered for who I am, you know?
Yeah.
So, heaven forbid if something were to happen to me and people were to go to a service, and what would I want them to say or talk about? Maybe just how I made them feel.
Yeah.
Maybe that would be good. That's something that can't be replicated or duplicated. So just, how I make people feel. I love to make people feel just, I don't know, better. That could mean a multitude of things, but yeah, maybe that.
Yeah. And then the last question I have is, knowing the knowledge you have now, what advice would you have told yourself, whether it was picking up a flag for the first time or even, going into exploring movement for the first time or anything like that?
Okay, well, I have very few regrets. I will say I do wish that I learned to play an instrument as a youngster. I can play a little piano. But aside from regrets, advice, I probably would have told younger me. I mean, I don't know that I have many regret. I feel like I feel like I actually don't have an answer for this, because I am so comfortable, in the fun journey, the ups and downs and arounds that has gotten me to where I am. Maybe I probably would have finished school sooner. I took major gap years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I will say this. I will say this. I'm in awe of the current, marching age class right now. The students that are able to march drum corps or indoor and go to school and work, like that, they are tenacious beasts. These students, this generation. I did not have that discipline, and so I took major gap years so I could just march. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then I stopped marching so I could just go to school. Mm-hmm. So I think I would have probably advised myself. I would have said, your future students are going to be able to do it, so you could probably do it too. Like, come on, they're definitely showing you up and putting the pedal to the metal. So I probably would have advised myself to, just tough it out. It's going to be hard while you're doing it, but you can do it. But at the same time, I have no regrets that I'm still in school. I love it. I'm a lifelong learner. So
that's amazing. Yeah. Well, where can our listeners find you?
Sure.
Is the social media, website, etc.?
Yeah, I have an Instagram. That's about all I use now. It's Samia Vanderkolff. And I guess they could find me on Bluecoats website and UDB's website for movement education if they're interested in reaching out or getting in contact and finding a resource within me.
Amazing. Well, thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Fem Forte. Fem Forte is produced and hosted by me, Amanda DeFries. Music is by Humans Win. To learn more about our guests, sponsors, and to get more resources, go to femfortepodcast.com and follow us on social media at Fem Forte Podcast.